And we will now take some questions that were sent over by email that I have on my computer. Should I start the questions? Okay. Let me just pull my computer up here. The first question comes from Tom W., who lives within a mile of the plant. It says the existing facility doesn't run that often, but I am hearing the new facility will run more. Will the new facility run all the time? And so how is this better for air quality? I'm going to direct this to Bill Reed. I don't think Bill's on.
Hi, sorry.
That's all right.
Tom, thank you very much for your question. The New York Independent System Operator, New York ISO, controls the energy grid and makes the decision when different power producers need to run. They'll make the decision as to how often Danskammer runs. Current models show that a modernized Danskammer could run as much as 70% of the time. But while the facility will run more often, it will actually be better for all of us. A modernized Danskammer will replace use of older, dirtier facilities and out-of-state coal. It will drastically reduce emissions in and around the region and across the Northeast. Second, the upgraded facility will be able to come online in a matter of minutes. The current facility and many others like it in the Hudson Valley take up to 11 hours to ramp up, creating air emissions that entire time before it can produce any power, and not really being a good resource to back up the renewable grid. Thank you.
The next question comes from Nancy Greiner of Cornwall. She said, I heard the Danskammer is a fracked gas plant. Is that true? Does Danskammer frack gas? And if the facility runs more often, won't you need to use more gas? I'm going to direct this to Michelle Hook.
Sure, thanks, Todd. So this is false. We do not frack gas. Fracking is prohibited in New York State. Danskammer does not frack. It's inaccurate to call us a fracked gas facility as well. Danskammer is a customer of Central Hudson, which is a public utility that provides gas to homes and businesses in the region. We're a customer of theirs as well. And I said during the presentation, because all pipelines are interconnected like a highway system, natural gas comes from many different locations and mingles together before it even reaches Central Hudson. So it's really impossible to say where that gas comes from. Again, we're a customer of Central Hudson, just as many of you who are here tonight. Even though the modernized facility will run more often, it will actually use 50% less natural gas than the existing facility does. So it reduces New York's reliance on gas while also improving emissions.
Thank you. The next question comes from Rich Whitney of New Paltz, New York. It says, didn't the current facility flood during Hurricane Sandy? How can you ensure the new facility won't flood? I guess Bill would be the one to answer that question. He's more familiar with it. So Bill?
Yeah, the older facility did flood during Hurricane Sandy. Literally somebody left the back door open and a lot of water got in the basement. But the modernized facility will be located farther back from Hudson River and at a much higher elevation than the existing facility. It also will be well out of the flood zone. This facility is an investment by our company in this region. We're taking every precaution to protect the facility from flooding and mitigating the impact of any extreme weather events. That's in our interest, and it's in the interest of the community to make sure nothing like that ever happens again. Thank you.
The next question comes from Shay Soriello. I recognize this name. He's wrote in several times in the newspaper. He's from Auburn, New York. He's a sales and marketing for power generation and wind in the U.S. for Hydac Corp. So he's been following this project. He has a question that says, New York State is moving toward renewable energy. How does Danskammer or any natural gas facility fit into New York's climate goals? And I'm going to direct that to Gavin.
First of all, thanks, Todd. This shouldn't be a debate about natural gas versus renewable energy. This is a debate about what's best for our future. We need to have renewable energy. We need to have a modern grid. Renewable energy needs to be part of backing up our fast-acting natural gas clean facilities like Danskammer. So I would make the argument that Danskammer and the attributes associated with it And the long-term attributes associated with using hydrogen is a bigger step towards having a greener future in New York than just relying on renewable energy. Because it comes back to what I said earlier, it comes back to reliability and what's accessible when we need it most.
Thank you. The next question comes from Jennifer from Beacon, New York. Recently, the American Lung Association gave the Hudson Valley a D rating for air quality. My son suffers from asthma and oftentimes can't go outside when the air quality is bad. Will it be worse with the new Danskammer plant? I'm going to direct this to Bill.
Why do I get all the tough questions? Thank you very much for this one. I pay a lot of attention to this myself. I have a son who's an asthma victim as well, and I care a lot about what the American Lung Association says about our region. It's important, though, to point out that the D rating has nothing to do with us because we don't run that often. The D is an average of all counties in the Hudson Valley, and several of the Hudson Valley counties aren't measured in the analysis because of population. The area immediately around our plant has an A rating for particle pollution and a B for ozone. Our facility is not a big contributor to either particulate matter or pollution. The American Lung Association points out in their study that the primary source of the pollution which causes negative health effects are cars and trucks, not power plants. We'd like to reiterate that an upgraded Danskammer would offset the use of older, dirtier plants and out-of-state coal. As a result, the facility will decrease regional emissions of all these harmful gases. Thank you.
The next question comes from Dean Tambori, town of Newburgh, Marlborough School District. He asked, what is the next step in the Article 10 process? When will a decision be made, and who will make the final decision? I'm going to direct that again to Bill.
Thanks, Dean, very much for your question. We filed the Article 10 application in December, and we're finishing up with all the comments that the Public Service Commission has on it. We have additional modeling, which has been done in the last week or so, and hopefully our application will be deemed complete soon. Once it is complete, the Siting Board will have 1 year to make a decision. During that time, we'll have a series of public meetings and requests for public comment about the project. The final decision is not made by us, it's made by the Siting Board, which is comprised of representatives of the Public Service Commission, the Department of Environmental Conservation, the Department of Health, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, and the Department of Economic Development, as well as 2 local community members. They're very sophisticated, they're experts, and they're really in a good position to run through our paces to make sure we can justify rebuilding the existing Danskammer facility. Thanks.
The next question comes from Anthony Mayo of Hopewell. He asks, New York State wants to transition to 100% renewables over the next few decades. We need more renewable resources like wind and solar across the state and here in the Hudson Valley. Could you just use the current site for renewables? I'm going to refer that to both Gavin and Michelle. So if you want to touch first on it, Gavin, and then Michelle.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. First of all, to make the renewable investment with the cost points associated with renewables, the site is not large enough to make that investment make sense. It is a very small footprint. So investing in renewables, and I'll kick it over to Michelle to go back to her slide, which will show how much space you would need to make that investment worthwhile. It's just not practical with the size of the site. Michelle?
Yeah, that's right, Gavin. So we have 180 acres on site, and I believe right now in New York State, you need at least 200 acres per wind turbine. So there's certainly not enough room there. And in order to provide enough wind or solar to be equal to what we supply now, you would need about 10,000 to 20,000 acres of clear-cut land. We do have a portion of our Article 10 filing that I'd like to point everybody to. You can get it on our website at danskammerenergy.com. That will tell you all of the alternative sources that we had to review and study as possible alternatives for the site and why natural gas ended up being the most optimal choice for that site.
We have a question, not exactly sure, it's a group from Green Circle. Could you share some more information about the salaries of the short-term and long-term job positions which will be created? What will be the average and medium salaries of individuals employed through the labor union? How many jobs will new facility create once construction is completed? I could touch on the construction jobs, and I'll let Bill touch on the long-term jobs. Construction jobs for us, on the low end on that project, the crafts would be around $40 an hour plus benefits of anywhere from $35 to $55 an hour. That's pension, welfare. A lot of times on these jobs, there's a lot of overtime to get done. So I would say the average salary of a construction worker who's working on that project is going to be anywhere from, $85 to $150,000 a year on these construction sites. I've seen the hours on both CPV and Cricket Valley. So they're good paying jobs for local guys, local workers, trade workers. As far as the long-term jobs and the amount of them, I'm going to turn that over to Bill to answer.
Yeah, the people who run these plants are pretty sophisticated. They're highly trained engineers and maintenance people. We think we'll have 30 to 35 in the long run at the site. And I think it's hard to predict, but I think the average compensation for each of these plus benefits will be well over $100,000 a piece.
And I think it's important to note that they've reached an agreement with the AFL-CIO. So I'm assuming there's going to be some really good union jobs there. And I thank Bill for that. The next question comes from Denise Rose. What will happen to the old facility? Real quickly, Bill, maybe you could answer that.
So we would like to bring as much renewable as onto the site as possible, in addition to the new turbines we'd like to install. So we've been looking at putting batteries in the building when it's no longer needed for power generation. We may put some on the roof. And also, we're just starting to do the analysis as to whether it would be the best thing to do to put electrolysis machines in the actual building itself, which would make it very efficient, to be perfectly honest, and would help with the economics overall. So we hope to find a very good next use for it. If we can't, we'll probably be taking it down. Thank you.
The next question comes from Joe Bengardo. He's a Hudson Valley resident. He asks, we all agree we need to invest in our local workforce, but why not invest in green jobs? I'd like to answer that myself, if everybody's okay with that. Absolutely, we need to invest in our local workforce. Unfortunately, right now, there are not many green job opportunities in the Hudson Valley that provide local union workers with good wages. This project invests in the local workforce, like I stated before. There's a project labor agreement. The project's going to be all union. They're good paying jobs. On top of that, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which was passed earlier, a lot of these projects, there's no prevailing wage rate attached. There was no labor protections in the bill. A lot of the environmentalists that claim to be supporters of labor let this bill slide without labor protection. So we're seeing a lot of these solar projects that come out. There's not a lot of local labor on them. There are a few. Con Ed has some projects coming out, which we're working on right now. They're committed to local union labor. But a lot of these projects that are coming out right now, people from out of state are coming in with low wages and not real good benefits. The next question comes from, he's very educated on this. I know him personally, Mark Servanone of A. Servanone Construction. He was involved in the landfill coal ash cell project, and he also did some of the capping there. He asked, the facility used to burn coal. I know there is a coal landfill on the Danskammer site. What will happen with that, and is it safe? And again, I'm going to direct that to Bill.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. When the facility first opened in 1951, it ran on coal and ran that way up until and on heating oil until 2014. There's a dry ash landfill on the site. It's 2/3 capped. We've been working with the Department of the Environment of the state of New York to cap the remaining 1/3, and that'll have to be done very carefully and very thoughtfully. We monitor the coal pile every day and send our analysis to the state. So far, we've had very little issues with any pollution or anything else coming out of the coal pile. It's lined and it seems to be in very good shape. But it's one of the chief concerns we have. Once it's entirely covered up, which it will be, hopefully within the next 12 months, any risks, a lot of the risks of a landfill will be taken away. Thank you.
We have a couple minutes left. I'm going to try to squeeze in 3 more questions. I have a question from Vinny Abinezi from New Jersey. With Indian Point coming offline rather, won't facilities like CPV and Cricket Valley provide enough energy to meet our region's demands? I'm going to refer that to Gavin.
Certainly, there's been studies about the reliability of our system, and the current Danskammer facility is part of that. What folks need to understand is that we need to make a cleaner supply of energy, and the Danskammer facility does that. It moves the ball forward. And I go back to something that is critically important that can't get lost on the folks watching this, is that this is private investment. The owners of this facility are investing hundreds of millions of dollars of their money to make this facility better and make the environment better and make this plant more reliable. So you as ratepayers don't have to pay for that. That is what is the biggest message that I'd like to leave with you tonight, is that while studies say that the new plant's not needed, the plant is needed to bolster reliability and enhance private investment in New York State.
Thank you, Gavin. The next question comes from Dave Williams of 14 Delaware Road, town of Newburgh. He's a 30-year resident. What kind of public health information does Danskammer need to include in their Article 10 application? I'm going to ask Michelle to answer that in a minute or less.
I'll do my best. But yeah, thanks. That's a good question, because we've actually been hearing a lot of other organizations say that there's not really a health analysis at all as part of the Article 10 application. New York State process for Article 10 is quite rigorous. We actually had to hire independent third parties that will do multiple studies about Danskammer, everything from air emissions to emergency response, pollution controls, even a look at the environmental justice communities around where the plant would be built. So to say that there's not a public safety review is not quite true. It's actually quite extensive.
The next question comes from Frank C. of Marlboro, New York. He is asking, who owns Danskammer? Are the owners from the Hudson Valley? I'm going to ask Bill to answer that.
So thank you very much. Danskammer is our only asset. Danskammer Energy has one job, and that's to keep this plant running. I'm one of the owners, and my fellow owners all come from the New York area. I was raised in the Hudson Valley, as I said before, and my father was a member of Congress who represented Westchester County for many, many years, and was actually chairman of the Department of the Environment and a committed environmentalist at one time. The Danskammer Energy Management Team is made up of 5 people who've lived or worked in the region for many, many years. Our facility staff is made up of Hudson Valley residents, but the current plant manager and our project manager are from Cornwall. So we are all local, and we're not some out-of-town group who doesn't really care about the community. We do. This is our primary job, our primary concern. So thank you very much.
I think we're just about out of time. I want to, if anybody needs to add anything real quick, Michelle, Gavin, or Bill, you good?
Thank you for the opportunity.
I guess we're wrapping up. We're right on time. I appreciate everybody for listening today to this webinar. Please visit the www.powerhudsonvalley.com or the Danskammer website for more information. We thank everybody for joining. I want to really appreciate, I thank Gavin for joining, and of course, Bill and Michelle, and the other guests that left, Gil Piquadio and Mike Brooks from Marlboro, and Frank Milazzo. I really appreciate it. I think that concludes this webinar.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.